Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. I'm Mark Owen. In this edition, never has Lebanon had greater need of its diaspora. The economic crisis has become so intense. More and more Lebanese living in the country are more and more dependent on support from family living abroad. Massive cash injections that have helped stop Lebanon sliding into social chaos and into an uprising as the country goes through one of the worst financial crises of modern times. This, of course, the view of the World Bank. Chloé Domat is our correspondent in Beirut. She's here in the studio. Chloé, great to see you. The Lebanese diaspora is widespread across the world. You take us in our report to meet Lebanese people in Côte d'Ivoire. Just how big a diaspora there are we talking about?
So the diaspora in Côte d'Ivoire is the biggest Lebanese diaspora on the African continent. But overall, the Lebanese diaspora is one of the biggest in the world. We consider that about 14 million Lebanese are spread across the globe compared to only about 4 million at home. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. The Lebanese have started leaving their country at the end of the 19th century. At the time, they were running away from local conflicts and from a very severe famine. And then, of course, there was the Lebanese Civil War between 1975 and 1990 that led to a second wave of migration. And what we're seeing now is the beginning of a third wave of migration with more and more Lebanese trying to escape the economic crisis. Now, generation after generation, the Lebanese have always sent money back home to help their families and villages. But with the current financial crisis, they've really become the backbone of the Lebanese economy. They're the ones holding the country up, and this is the story we wanted to tell.
Thank you very much indeed. Without further ado, let's take a look at our report. SOS Diaspora, report by Chloé Domat and Sophie Guignon for, of course, France 24.
Beirut, the capital city of a bankrupt state. Most residents haven't had access to their savings in 3 years. Banks have barricaded themselves with barbed wire and heavy metal doors for fear angry citizens might attack them. They only let customers in one by one. Withdrawals are limited to a few hundred euros a month, and the local currency has lost over 95% of its value on the widely used black market. In order to survive, the Lebanese are looking to secure foreign currencies. Zainab Karake is a housewife. She is waiting for a transfer from her brother who works in Saudi Arabia. With the crisis, her husband's salary is no longer enough to cover daily expenses.
Life has become very expensive. Electricity bills alone are a huge expense. This is a small relief. We use it for eating and drinking.
These money transfer services are the only real alternative to banks and welcome over 250,000 clients per month. According to the manager, numbers keep on increasing. With the minimum wage now below 30 euros a month, money sent by relatives living abroad has become the only source of income for many families.
We're not talking about amounts that can be used for saving or investing. This is money people use to make ends meet.
Clients like Zainab take out 500 euros a month on average. Remittances from the diaspora form the backbone of the Lebanese economy. In 2021, they totaled 6 billion euros, more than half the country's GDP. For over a century, economic crises and wars have pushed the Lebanese from all religious groups to leave their home country. Today, there are 3 times more Lebanese living abroad than in Lebanon itself. Over 200,000 have settled in France. Among them, Yumna and Aya, who have created an NGO to send humanitarian aid back home.
This is leaving tomorrow with the medicine.
These essential products can either no longer be found or have become unaffordable in Lebanon.
Sanitary pads are amongst the things that have become the most expensive.
All these items were gifted by French individuals and corporations. The NGO then pays for transportation by truck and cargo ship all the way to Beirut.
We'll start again tomorrow. We still have 60 boxes, wheelchairs and hospital beds.
Lebanon has become really dependent on aid. When I go to Lebanon and see how distributions are happening, I feel like what we are doing is a tiny drop in an ocean of needs.
Just a small signature, please.
Set up 2 years ago as an emergency solution, this NGO has become a permanent response to the crisis. In order to afford regular shipments, Yumna and Aya sometimes have to swap their casual outfits for party dresses and indulge in fundraising.
The NGO, not us, really deserves great applause. Today we are starting a new round of fundraising.
So if you're a professional of the pharmacy industry or the retail sector, or if you know anyone who might help us, don't hesitate.
The idea is really to be able to fund our operations in a more sustainable way, and it's also a reminder partly to say that we won't stop thinking about Lebanon and we won't stop sending aid.
Yumna and Aya can rejoice. Thanks to this concert, they were able to raise 14,000 euros, enough to send 2 new shipments of aid to Lebanon. Tripoli, the country's second largest city, is also its poorest. Since the crisis, many inhabitants were forced to turn to begging. In front of this local NGO, 63-year-old civil servant Yola Houri survives on charity alone. With the local currency's devaluation, her 1,600 euro salary is now barely worth 60. Yola Houri isn't entitled to any state benefits and must come to this free pharmacy to find the medical treatments she can no longer afford. Sanitary pads and medication sent from France line the shelves.
My back hurts. Do you have a cream?
Take this pill and this pill.
I don't know what to tell you. It all shows, no? We've never had to live like this before. We're very tired psychologically.
Just like Yola Houri, over 80% of the Lebanese population now lives below the poverty line.
How many families do we have today?
150.
We can't meet everyone's needs. What we call the new poor, unfortunately, it's the middle class, civil servants, employees, teachers, and anyone who works for the state.
You want some tuna?
Yola, the civil servant, fills her bags to the top. She will have to live off these groceries for a month until her next visit to the NGO. Not wanting to rely on humanitarian aid, more and more young Lebanese are joining the diaspora. The authorities have recorded up to 10,000 departures a month. A lot of them dream of moving to Western countries, but the recent pandemic and visa restrictions often push them towards other horizons. Ivory Coast is home to the largest Lebanese community on the African continent. Over 100,000 members. Some districts of Abidjan even feel like a small version of Beirut. Hussein El Haj arrived recently and now manages a Lebanese restaurant. Back in Lebanon, his 2,000 euro paycheck was divided by 10 overnight. With this new job, Hussein is back at the level of his former salary. But he must work 12 hours a day to prove his worth.
We lost everything in Lebanon. We have to start all over again. But here, there are opportunities. We might soon open a second or third location.
A lot of
Lebanese come here hoping to find jobs. My problem is that I don't have any more vacancies, but I read their resumes, and if a position opens up, of course, I will hire them.
Those recently arrived from Lebanon feel that coming to Abidjan was a hard sacrifice.
I didn't have a choice other than coming here, but my routine now, it's work, home, sleep. It's not really a life. Being far from family, it destroys you.
To settle in exile, newcomers can count on those who made the same trip long before them. The Lebanese have been present in Ivory Coast for 3 or 4 generations and now control 40% of the economy, including key industries like real estate, cocoa production, and services. Dr. Mohamed Lakis, a local politician, is a perfect example of those sometimes called the African Lebanese.
Hello guys, how are you? Hello my Lebanese brothers, how are you? I call them Lebanese because I am Ivorian, they are Lebanese.
Most of the Lebanese living in Ivory Coast are Shia Muslims. Like Dr. Lakis, a lot of them were born in Ivory Coast or have Ivorian nationality, but they continue to financially support their community back in Lebanon.
Honestly, the first time I went to Lebanon, I was 30 years old. Some of us never set foot in Lebanon, let's be clear. But there are chains of solidarity. We have mosques and institutions to do this collectively. When Lebanon coughs, we feel sick. We are ill. It is totally normal that we feel it here.
Dr. Lakis plans on living out his days in Abidjan, but he continues to closely follow the news out of Lebanon. Every night after his shift, Hussein, the restaurant manager, calls his wife and 2 kids.
Allô? ايه بابا كيفك؟ سافا؟ شو كيف هالسكول؟ ماشي الحال كله تمام؟
Last year, I couldn't see them for a year. I feel responsible for my family, or else I wouldn't be here. Personally, I'd rather go back home.
In the meantime, Hussein continues to work hard to send them €1,000 every month. Back in Lebanon, entire villages depend on the diaspora, and some even put up billboards to say thank you. The village of Lala, in the eastern part of the country, is technically home to 12,000 people, but 3/4 live in Canada, Colombia, or Brazil. They used to spend their money building lavish holiday homes, but now they fund public services the bankrupt Lebanese state has ceased to provide. In the secondary school, Headmaster Domat has had to manage without a budget for 2 years.
The survival of the school is in the hands of the diaspora. Overhead projectors, paper, ink, all the things we need on a daily basis. Frankly, if it wasn't for the diaspora, we wouldn't have anything.
There wouldn't even be electricity. In Lala, the power gets cut off for 20 hours a day. So to light up the classrooms, the diaspora funded solar panels. Domat is checking the installation with an engineer.
The panels are facing south, so you can use them in the morning and in the afternoon as well. The diaspora plays a role that's more important than the states. They finance everything, from food deliveries all the way to these solar panels.
The state has abandoned us. Today, even public institutions must find ways to function by themselves. We must find money on our own.
The football field, the mosque, even the town hall, 90% of the village's infrastructure was paid for by expats. As a way out of the crisis, Lebanon is hoping to get help from the International Monetary Fund, but the donors want to impose a reform agenda, and the Lebanese authorities are refusing. Meanwhile, the country continues to live off the citizens it pushed into exile.
Our reporter, Chloé Domat, is still with us. Thank you so much for that insight into what's happening with that Lebanese diaspora. Daily life in Lebanon clearly is becoming more and more tough. Inflation, a massive issue.
Yes, and sadly, since we finished filming that story at the end of last year, the situation has continued to deteriorate. The local currency dropped even lower, and it's a massive headache for anyone living in Lebanon right now. Shops and restaurants have to continuously change their prices to adapt to the situation. And so to try and make things easier, some of the business owners decided recently to price their items in US dollars. And so while that brings an element of stability, it also deepens the inequalities between the Lebanese who have access to foreign currencies and can afford prices in dollars and those who don't. And what we're seeing these days is a Lebanon that is increasingly divided between those two groups.
And one other issue is really pressing in Lebanon, that of corruption. Are steps being taken to eradicate this?
Exactly. Well, we try to touch upon this at the end of our story. I think it's pretty clear now that if Lebanon wants to come out of the economic crisis, it's going to need external help. And the international institutions, the IMF, for instance, who could provide that help, are not willing to sign a blank check to the Lebanese leadership. They're asking for reforms. Now, so far, the Lebanese authorities have refused to change any of their policies, and the country is really getting stuck in a political deadlock. Lebanon hasn't had a head of state for several months now because the members of parliament can't agree on which candidate to vote for. And as a result of this situation, all of the state institutions and the public services are really crumbling down. A very pressing issue is, of course, also corruption and the lack of accountability in general. Lebanon ranked 150 out of 180 on Transparency International's latest corruption index. So it is a massive issue. There is hope that the country can get back on its feet, but right now it's difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Of course, that can't come soon enough, can it, Chloé? Thank you very much indeed. You can, of course, see the report again via our website, France24.com. That's SOS Diaspora, taking the temperature in Lebanon, but looking to how Lebanese people abroad are helping. Report by Sophie Guignon and Chloé Domat. Do enjoy it again if you can. For now, thanks for being with us, and stay with us here on France 24.